Hello to everyone who's willing to listen to the second demo of the podcast. I did one before this, um, and then a practice demo before it, and I wasn't too happy with it. So, anyway, with this, this is something that I've always wanted to do since I've watched the Scream TV show. One of the characters, Noah, he tells these creepy stories and talks about, being a victim of a serial killer, and discusses the backstories to all these killings and horror movie franchises. And I just wanted to do the same thing. Really, it's just one of the most interesting concepts or ideas to discuss why something is scary. Why do we fear the things that we fear? So, I don't know. If you're doing homework, maybe just put it on in the background. I'm not doing a face cam, so don't expect me to be showing my face for about, I don't know, for this demo, maybe about 10 minutes or 20, 15 minutes. So just run me in the background, relax. However you want to relax. I don't know, if you have a beanbag chair, just sit on that beanbag chair. Just lay down or something. If you wanted to watch this before you go to bed, it's pardon me. It's really entirely up to you how you want to listen to this podcast, but I thank you anyway. If you're reading this from my post on Facebook, or if you're just passing by on YouTube in the horror section and you're like, hey, I wanna listen to this horror podcast. Anyway, so yeah, the idea came from a character in the Scream TV show. Originally, the demo before this, I was discussing Scream as a whole, and as a horror genre that really revitalized the 1990s. Because you had this period of time, right, where Halloween came out in the late, I think, 78, and then Friday the 13th came 2 years after that, and then, in the middle of all that, there was just franchises that ran itself dry. All these sequels, all these copycats that really did the same thing that happened to the film industry in like the late 60s, where it was just, it started off big, and then somehow people lost interest gradually over time, which you may or may not agree with some of the films that are coming out right now. Not essentially horror films, but there's been some complaints, or rather, about how much superhero films we're gonna get over our lifetime, and over the course of 3 years even, we could count to maybe 10 or 12 cinematic films and superheroes, which for me, I don't mind at all. I mean, I love superhero films. It's just a part of who I am, is watching these films, because they, some aspects about that film leech onto me, and gives me this excitement. Anyway, but this isn't a podcast about superheroes. It's more about the tragedies that people face, and of horror. And we may or may not touch upon video games that have, that scary feel to it, that terrifying atmosphere of you role-playing as a character and entering these vast different areas with other people, sometimes multiplayer. But we'll see where we go. This is just an introduction to a horror podcast called Inner Sanctum, which originally was gonna be for some web series that I planned on making that was not anywhere linked to anything horror. Inner Sanctum was just the name that I gave to a bunch of vigilantes who wanted to become heroes, and within their mind they created some sanctum, the place of happiness, the inner sanctum. But in this situation, inner sanctum is our deepest, darkest thoughts. That's what I would interpret that to be. So everyone has fears, everyone's scared of something, everyone has these specific things that get them terrified. And it's just an interesting thing to learn about the concepts of why we're scared of them. Some people fear death. Some people, they just can't tolerate gore. People are afraid of heights, dolls, cockroaches, insects, spiders. The list could go on and on and on. And at the end of the day, we all die. Some people are more afraid of that concept than someone else, but at the end of the day, we all die. And within these horror films, these horror shows, we get to watch that happen. Now, I'm not a big advocate in going out and killing people. That's not my thing. It's just to understand what goes on within these killer minds, or the victims' minds. It's just interesting. Plain old simple, nothing evil, nothing, anything like that. It's just, when you strip down the layers of these individuals, what do you get? What do you get from a comparison between someone who watches horror films and laughs? That's the case with me sometimes. Sometimes I watch these scary films that are marketed as being scary, but I'm just sitting there laughing my ass off. Whereas to some people, an example of this, right, would be The Gallows. The Gallows came out in 2015. It was marketed as being a pretty scary film, and then I sat there laughing through most of it because it was just, I don't know, I don't want to call it terrible. They worked their ass off for a cinematic experience, about a hangman and a drama play and killing all these people, but there was just something about it that was a bit too cliche for me, I think, within all the strands of what you know about horror. And it was just, I don't know, it was just something for me to sit down, appreciate the amount of time they spent working on the film, but it was just funny to me. And that's the case with some people, even with the most scariest of films. You've got I would have named some scary films, but films like the horror genre are subjective. Some, like I was saying before, some people laugh at them. So I can't even name any films off the top of my head that would be legitimately scary for everyone. I mean, maybe you could comment below and tell me, but off the top of my head right now, trying to think about it, what people might laugh at, what people might find truly scary is, it's going to be different for everyone. I'm not sure of a universally accepted horror film that terrifies everyone. So, we never know. There's 7 billion people in the world. Everyone's different. Anyway, like I was saying before within The Gallows, before I got really sidetracked, though relevant, is my stepbrother who barely watches any horror films. In fact, surprisingly, I don't watch that many horror films. But lately I have, right? I've rectified the lack of horror in my life, but I've finally decided to work through it and watch anything I can. And so, in moments in the gallows, he was terrified, absolutely terrified, that even I started to make him jump scare when the moments to me weren't that terrifying. And I'd try to scare him during the movie because it was fun for me. And that's one of the situations that could happen. You're watching a horror movie with your friends or family, and you find yourself laughing in the film, or genuinely scared when it provokes your thought sensors, where the way that you react to them screaming and them terrified is you in the mindset of yourself being just as terrified and scared as they are, despite you not being in the film, but you're watching it, you're seeing the world through their eyes. So when they're off running, scared, trying to hide under a bed, away from the killer, that's something that you experience. Some people are claustrophobic, so when the character runs and hides into a closet, it's suddenly so much more terrifying than someone who's not claustrophobic, right? And then when that killer opens his door, peers in, and grabs you out, that's all the more terrifying to them. And you could see that the next time you watch a horror film with a person, friends with, whatever, and see which moments trigger yourself and which moments trigger them, because sometimes it's going to be entirely different to yours. And so that's the scenario that we face sometimes in horror films. Right. So yeah, that's going to be the introduction to this podcast. A good 12 minutes and some discussion about our fears. Maybe the next one I'll be dissecting, like I said, dissecting and running through established horror franchises and maybe some one-off films, because some of the cult films like that exist somewhere in the catalogue of films that have come out within the last 100 years. So, thanks for listening. Maybe, hopefully, I put you to sleep. Not literally, but, if you're watching this before you go to bed and hearing the sound of my voice, you could go to sleep easier. Maybe some ASMR. Who knows? But, anyway, yeah. This will be the start of many long discussions with myself about horror and fears and all things creepy and scary. One of the things that I thought about doing was just reading about stories from creepypasta, crediting the authors and whatever, and just reading them out to you, maybe acting out some voices. But at this moment, this podcast is a demo. I say it ran for 12 minutes, it's running for 13 minutes now. It's probably going to go on for 14 minutes, but you get the idea. It's just a demo. So if you want to hear more, like this video, maybe subscribe to the channel, and comment your universally distinguished horror film that you think would be able to scare anyone. So, thanks for listening. Not thanks for watching. Okay, yeah, that was cheesy, but thanks for listening. And I hope you have a good and terrifying day.